Angular provides root guards to guard its roots. It provides canActivate, canMatch, canActivateChild, canDeactivate root guards. Basically, using the root guards, we decide whether a component can be accessible by a user or not. It also decides whether the child roots of any component is accessible or not. In this video, I will discuss about canActivateChild. canActivate root guard decides whether, if I use here canActivate root guards, canActivate root guard decides whether book component is accessible or not, and canActivateChild root guard will decide whether its child roots are accessible or not. Here I am using canActivateChild only in our demo application. So let us see how to create our canActivateChild. To create a canActivateChild root guard, we have to create a service that should be injectable. Suppose I am creating a service named as permission service, and create a method here that will decide whether the user has permission or not. Return boolean value true or false. In my code, I'm just checking whether the user has permission or not to access the child roots. Look at the code. If this dot is permitted is returning false right now. It means permission, no permission, the user has no permission. It is hard coded for the demo purpose. And in this way, user canActivateChild method is returning whether the user has permission or not. Now come to the roots. Create a function of canActivateChildFn type. Before creating child function, you should know about their syntax. canActivateChildFn has the syntax as same like canActivate root snapshot, router state snapshot, activate root snapshot, router state snapshot. Okay. And for the canActivate, we use canActivate property from the root interface, and for canActivateChild, we use canActivateChild property from root interface. Now let's create the function. Here is a function permission canActivateChildFn. It is of canActivateChildFn type. The arguments are root and state. Our service is permission service. Get it using inject function and then call its user canActivateChild. We have already created user canActivateChild inside permission service that returns the boolean value true or false whether the user has permission or not. We can see it again. It returns whether the user has permission or not. In this way, our canActivateChildFn is ready. Its name is permission canActivateChildFn. Now come to the root. We have to guard the book components children. The children path is detail /id colon id, and this will open book detail component. We will guard this root on the basis of permission, whether the user has permission to access children or not. So what we have to do is come to this path, books path, and use the property canActivateChild and use here the function you have created. And now user will be able to access, because we have not using anything in canActivate, so user will be can access the books path and will open book component. But when user tries to open books /detail colon id to open the book detail component, at that time the permission will be checked whether the children is accessible or not for that user. So let's check it. I will show some path I have created. This is book component that will run book path, and this is accessible. The children path is this book detail 11 book detail component. So my code is already running. We can see that this is the book component that will open the books path, and this is for writer component. We have not applied any guards. Now open the book component. We can see that we can access the book component, but when we try to access the child component, we are unable to access. I am clicking here, but I am not able to access here. Let's give it a permission. I have done it here false. Let's make it true. Now we can see that the child root is accessible. If we want to decide whether the child roots are accessible or not using two functions, then we can create one more function. Suppose for the demo, I have created this function that will check whether the user has editor role or not. I have created another service, user service, and in the user service I have a method that will decide whether it has editor role or not. Right now this is true. So now we have two functions, permission canActivateChildFn and role canActivateChildFn. To configure it, come here and just assign it, add an array. canActivateChild accepts array of canActivateChildFn functions. Now the user can access book detail component only when this both function will return true. In my case, permission canChildFn is returning true, and this one is also returning true. So user can access the child roots. This is the book component. Now I'm going to access the book detail component. User can access. Suppose I am making it false, role editor. Now what happens that permission canActivateChildFn is returning true, but role canActivateChildFn is returning false. canActivateChild will allow to access children only when if both function returns true. For the demo, now I have make it to return false. Let's see. Now user will not be able to access book detail component. Look, they can access book component but not book detail component. I am clicking on the book detail component, but this is not accessible. We can avoid these codes by using mapToCanActivateChild function. In this case, no need to create this function. It can directly access from the injectable services, as we have two service, permission service and user service, but the requirement is that these services must have a method named as canActivateChild. Now here method name must be canActivateChild. Now it will run as before. Permission service, user service, we just directly passed our injectable services to mapToCanActivateChild. Let's see the permissions. Permitted true and this is false, so we will not be able to access. Look at here, we cannot access here. We can access write component that has no root guard, access book component, but we will not be able to access child component of book component. Make it true. Now we can access it. One more thing we should know, that our roots should be configured in app application config here using provide router. Pass here as a roots. This function is with component binding is used for binding @input for the query parameters. So we have to configure here our roots using the provide router. In this way, we can create CanActivateChild root guards. Thanks.